Hello there. Welcome
Hello
back
there.
to another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And today we are back with yet another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy, Season 21. This is episode 3 of season 21 of Star Wars in the Galaxy, episode 172 of Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Today, we have 3 more episodes of Star Wars Rebels, Out of Darkness, Empire Day, and Empire Day Part 2, aka Gathering Forces. There's a lot going on in these 3 episodes, so Jacob, why don't you start us off with our summaries for Out of Darkness?
All right. So in Out of Darkness, we open on the Phantom with Hera, Ezra, and Sabine aboard, evading some TIE fighters on Lothal. They get themselves into a very, very sticky situation, but thanks to some fancy flying from Hera, they are able to extract themselves and defeat the TIE fighters. However, the Phantom does kind of scrape its underbelly. The underbelly gets scraped on some rocks, and the ship starts leaking fuel. They take it back to the Ghost, and Zeb and Ezra run diagnostics and fix up the ship because Hera is going out to meet up with Fulcrum, or to receive a supply drop from Fulcrum, who is this mysterious figure who's supplying them intelligence, giving them their missions, their marching orders, and whatnot. And this does not sit well at all. This is not sitting well at all with Sabine, who is extremely uncomfortable with the level of secrecy involved, saying that she feels like she needs to know what's happening, what they're fighting for, what they're doing with their what they're doing with their part of the fight. You know, coming out of the Imperial Academy, knowing everything that she went through. She says that it's very important for her, given her past, which she cites as the reason. So before the diagnostic can be finished, Zeb and Ezra get into some shenanigans with Chopper, and Sabine and Hera leave for the Anaxes base, the abandoned Republic base on Anaxes, which also shows up in Season 7 of the Clone Wars. They leave for the base, they go and pick up the supplies. However, they get attacked by fyrnocks, which is large, sort of leopard, lion, bear, lizard, large, angry, dangerous beasts which reside in the cave of the abandoned base. They do have a little bit of cover because the fyrnocks hate the sunlight, and so they will only come out when an asteroid is passing between the sun and the planet, casting a shadow. And Sabine and Hera use these canisters of rhydonium, a highly explosive material that they find abandoned at the base, to create a perimeter and kill a lot of the creatures in the explosions. However, it's not enough, and they are overran. But of course, just in time, the Ghost does show up and is able to rescue the Phantom and the supplies. Now, Hera, of course, is furious. They're kind of furious with Zeb and Ezra, and they're giving them a hard time. However, Hera does say to Sabine, "I know that I'm asking a lot from you to put your faith in someone that you don't know and a source that you don't know with Fulcrum. However, I trusted you with my life out there, and this does improve the situation somewhat between Hera and Sabine." And that is where the episode ends.
Fuck. Okay. Private chat, by the way. In Empire Day, Ezra and Kanan are training outside the town of Jothal, and Kanan is trying to get Ezra to connect with a Lothcat, but clearly something is distracting Ezra and he is not focused. It is revealed that this episode is taking place on Empire Day, which is the 15th anniversary of the day the Empire was founded, that we, of course, saw in Revenge of the Sith. After the cut to title, Ezra and Kanan head in, as well as the rest of the Ghost crew, to Old Joe's Pit Stop, which is a local cantina run by a harmless Ithorian named Old Joe. There are a bunch of TIE pilots who are relaxing there, but also on official Imperial duty as they are inspecting for a highly valuable Imperial target who is a Rhodian, as they racially profile a Rhodian who is just happens to be in Old Joe's bar. They also demand that Old Joe play the Imperial HoloNet channel in following of Imperial protocol on Empire Day, where they're covering the local festivities on Lothal as well as all across the galaxy for the anniversary of the Empire's founding. Old Joe is reluctant, but turns on the channel, which is quickly interrupted by an urging from Gul Travis to boycott Imperial activities on Empire Day. There is a parade being held that's been commissioned by Governor Price of Lothal in Capital City that the Ghost Crew moves to intercept. Ezra goes back briefly to his old tower and experiences and gets flashbacks of his parents talking about fighting the Empire. It's revealed that Ezra knows the Rhodian who the Empire is searching for, who is an old friend of his parents named Tseebo. Meanwhile, the rest of the Ghost Crew get to Capital City where the parade is being held, organized by Commandant Oresco, but of course attended as well by Minister Tua, as well as several other Imperial officials. They are debuting a new model of TIE fighter, the TIE Advanced V1, and flying that TIE Advance is the ace pilot who works in the forces local to Lothal, Baron Valen Rudor. However, right before the TIE is supposed to take off, the Ghost Crew throws up some fireworks in the air that allow them to plant some charges near the TIE fighter. So at the time is right, they create a massive explosion and blow up the TIE fighter, lightly injuring Oresco and Tua and everybody else who's standing near the TIE fighter. Is then revealed that the Grand Inquisitor happens to be on Lothal, probably in pursuance of the rebels. But this flagrant act of disruption at the Imperial parade immediately sends Minister Tua, the Grand Inquisitor, Commandant Oresco, and Agent Callus, who is also there, scrambling to find whoever commissioned this attack. As Zeb finds an alternate mean out of the city to get back to Hera and Chopper on the Ghost, Ezra and Canon and Sabine hide out at what used to be his parents' house on Lothal. Canon and Sabine learn more about Ezra's past as Ezra finds Tseebo in the basement of his parents' old house. Ezra tells them that Tseebo went to work for the Imperial Information Office after the Empire disappeared Ezra's parents, and Ezra blames Tseebo for his parents being taken away by the Empire. They quickly realize that Tseebo has information that the Empire does not want to get out to the public. And it is revealed that Tseebo has gotten implants that connect him to tons of Imperial databases, files, just important stuff, information about, much of it classified, about what the Empire is doing on not only Lothal, but other planets in the Outer Rim. And that is why the Empire doesn't want him to get out. Ezra, through the use of more psychometry, hears conversations that, by touching objects, that his mother and his father had with Tseebo begging them not to get involved for the sake of their son, with them replying that their son is exactly why they're getting involved against the Empire. As this is happening, Sabine also realizes that today, Empire Day, is also Ezra's birthday, and that nobody knew that little detail. So Kanan and Sabine and Ezra decide to get Tseebo out, hijacking an Imperial troop transport and just kind of driving it to a rendezvous to meet with the Ghost, which goes surprisingly successfully, although Kanan does engage with a bit of a scuffle with Agent Callus along the way. However, they all, including Tseebo, get back onto the Ghost and take to the skies, where the Grand Inquisitor pursues them in his own TIE Advanced V1 along with a squadron of several TIE fighters. However, as they're getting airborne, Tseebo reveals to Ezra that he knows what happened to his parents. That brings us right into gathering forces with a to be continued nonetheless Nonetheless, with the to be continued at the end of the episode, bringing us right back into gathering forces as we pick up right where we left off. The Grand Inquisitor manages to get a shot off on one of the turrets of the Ghost, temporarily disabling Chopper, who can now no longer plug in hyperspace coordinates into the Ghost for them to jump away. Unbeknownst to them, the Inquisitor has planted a tracking device onto the Ghost so that no matter wherever they go, they will still be tracked anyway. Tseebo, however, manages to, at the last second, plug in some hyperspace coordinates, and they're able to jump away from the Empire. As they're in hyperspace, Tseebo actually detects the hyperspace, the tracking device, and the rebels make a bold plan, because the tracking device is actually on the Phantom, to detach the Phantom from the Ghost while in hyperspace and lure the Grand Inquisitor to the Anaxes base that Hera and Sabine visited in Out of Darkness, to sick some fyrnocks on the Grand Inquisitor to get rid of him, or at least throw them off the tail of the Ghost permanently. While Ezra and Kanan are distracting the Grand Inquisitor, the other members of the Ghost crew are trying to get Tseebo to Fulcrum, who will allow Tseebo safe passage away from the Empire. Ezra and Kanan successfully detach the Phoenix and divert the Inquisitor to the asteroid that is now what remains of Anaxes. They sick some fyrnocks on him, but it only delays him a little bit, as the Grand Inquisitor pretty easily takes down Kanan and starts tempting Ezra with the power of the dark side. Ezra, thinking Kanan is dead, unknowingly taps into the dark side of the Force and sicks, as he calls, the mother of all fyrnocks onto the Inquisitor, who ravages him, specifically influencing that fyrnock with the power of the dark side. The tapping into the dark side weakens and eventually knocks Ezra unconscious, where he is taken back to the Phantom and escapes in Kanan's arms. Meanwhile, Tseebo is successfully gotten to Fulcrum, as Kanan and Ezra grapple with the after effects of Ezra's brief touch of the dark side of the Force. Meanwhile, Sabine reveals that she managed to get a hollow disc from Ezra's home with a picture of young Ezra and his parents to give to him as a belated birthday present. We have a lot to get to in this episode.
We certainly do.
We have a pretty standard Rebels episode, followed by what I only realized this time around, even though this is my third watch of Rebels as a series, is the mid-season double episode of Rebels Season 1. I didn't realize it. This obviously happened in Bad Batch a lot, but I didn't realize that Rebels did it too. I guess I wasn't looking as closely at season structure, but they absolutely do it this season. They're probably doing it. I know Ghosts of Geonosis in Season 3 is the mid-season. Season 2, is there a mid-season? I doubt Season 4 is probably Rebel Assault.
Yeah, I think just 1 and 4 maybe 3 as well.
Well, 3 is Ghost of Geonosis.
Yeah, there you go.
And then let's check. I'm going to look at the Rebels episodes to just see if they do one for Season 2. They probably do. Yeah, I would say probably Legacy and A Princess on Lothal is probably their mid-season premiere. That makes as much sense as any. Yeah, and they're 11 and 12 of a 22 episode season. That makes as much sense as any to be the mid-season premiere. So yeah, even though I hadn't thought about that in that way for quite a while, but either way, point being that we got 3 incredibly important episodes to get to. Jacob, let's get into Out of Darkness first. As you mentioned, we start off with some Phantom versus TIE Fighter action, some great banter between Ezra, Hera, and Sabine.
Yeah.
The Hera's line, "There isn't a pilot in the Imperial fleet that can outrun me." It's clearly, and I'll probably end up mentioning this in the season finale, one of the big takeaways I have from this series, this season, this rewatch so far this season, is damn, do I fucking love Hera Syndulla. I love that character. She's easily like I never hated her, or I thought I always liked her before, but like this season's just like, man, she is the one holding the entire crew together. She is the one most on top of everything. She is the rebel leader that the Alliance needs, but doesn't know they need, because unlike Mon Mothma, she has the military chops to prove it. Unlike people like Luthen, Rael, and Saw Gerrera, her morals are pretty in check, and she's a good pilot to boot. She's got it all. She's got it all. I also feel like, as much as I love Leia, I think she's a little bit more grounded than Leia, just because Leia was raised as royalty, and Hera, although she was raised in an affluent family,
she was on her own from pretty young on. She ran off,
and that affluent family was still of an oppressed peoples, so there's a little bit of difference there. Yeah, anything you got about this? Anything you got for this like opening sequence? I think the TIE fighter zooming towards the Phantom, I said in my notes, was easily the weakest cut to title so far. I thought, actually, even though I have varying opinions of all three of these episodes, I thought the cuts to title in these three were easily the weakest we've seen so far. Maybe I had too high of a standard set, because the other ones most of the time were pretty darn good. Yeah, but what do you have about the cold open, if anything?
Not a lot. I think it's sort of, it really sort of exists just to set up the sort of the hard point of the plot, of what's keeping them on an axis, which is just the fuel leak. That being said, it's very cool, and also, of course, Ezra, being his usual cocky self, we get a fun moment there when Ezra's like, "When are you going to teach me how to do this?" And Hera's like, "You think I'm going to teach you how to do this? Are you serious?
How to fly my ship?"
Yeah. And I think we start to see. This episode is the first episode where we really dig into Hera and Sabine.
Yeah, I think this episode is actually so we get quite a bit Hera, of a sort of. Yeah, we get a lot of Hera, but we also. Yeah, I think this is also an episode, like, I think what this episode is most important for is Sabine, because she is easily the character that we've gotten the least of in the series so far, and I think the writers recognized, okay, we have Ezra's development as a character, and we're going to be developing Ezra as a character a lot, but Sabine, despite her vastly different origins than Ezra, is actually in a fairly similar place to Ezra. We don't know when Sabine joined the crew, or at least I don't think we do. I can quick Wikipedia that. The point I'm trying to make is that Sabine isn't that much older than Ezra, at least that I can remember.
I think she's supposed to be 1 year older than him. She's supposed to be 16 at the start. He's supposed to be just about turning 15.
I don't think that's actually actually that might be Yeah, no, she's 2 years older than Ezra. She's 2 years older than Ezra.
21 BBY.
Yeah, 21 BBY. I just looked it up. Yeah, so she's 2 years older than Ezra. Yeah. She's 17. She's 16, 17. But still pretty similar age to Ezra. And, she's one of the newer Ghost crew members. I'm trying to see if there's, like, we know.
She came in after Zeb, because she's Spectre 5 and he's Spectre 4.
Yeah, and
so she's generally, she's the second newest.
Yeah. And she came at, Wikipedia says she came in at 16, so it had to be sometime in the last year.
Yeah.
So she's still pretty new. Yeah. Zeb and Hera and Canon all got a sense of their MO. Sabine is more in tune with them than Ezra is, but to say that she's even as in tune with what they're doing as Zeb is would be inaccurate. There's that exchange that really sets off the conflict of the episode. Where, may I ask, does this intel come from? You may ask. And look, I thought a lot, we will talk about this, and it's not even because I like this series so much, and I do like the series a lot, but I think it's because, as we talked about with Meg, that Andor and Rebels, I feel like, are really dyadic in a lot of ways. That, like, these, because they cover a lot of the same topics, you think about one when you think about the other. So like, so I get where Sabine's coming from. As Hera has the super secret source, Hera that she and Kanan know. Doesn't sound like Zeb knows, and who knows how much Kanan knows, and really who knows how much Hera knows. I got the feeling. I remember the first time I watched Rebels, I got the feeling that even Hera didn't really know who Fulcrum was. Now I'm starting to think that she might have a bit more of an idea.
Yeah.
But she definitely, I don't even think she knows. Maybe she knows what Fulcrum looks like, but I don't think she knows their name. So yeah, there's just there's just a lot of questions about like that's something that is very interesting because because I've heard a common critique, and I get this critique, that we have seen a lot of Fulcrum's stories throughout canon. Dave loves the character. I'm trying to act as if we all don't know who Fulcrum is, but Dave loves Ahsoka, and she's the first character that he had a hand in creating and shepherding.
Yeah.
So like, but like for somebody who we've seen so much of, after like TCW ends, there's a surprising amount we don't know.
Yeah.
Like between the Ahsoka novel or Resolve and Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, whichever one you want to think is canon, between that and Rebels, and even during Rebels a lot, she's often mentioned, she's doing other stuff. Okay, what's other stuff? In addition, there was a thing, and I think I mentioned this on In a Galaxy before. Like there was and maybe I misunderstood or maybe I misremembered this, but I feel like there was a comment that somebody made in the know about Ahsoka before season 1 came out that season 1 would reveal what Ahsoka had been doing during the events of the original trilogy. Maybe I just misremembered that, but obviously we didn't really get that. So like, Ahsoka says in the first episode of her show, "I go where I'm needed." Okay, where is that?
I mean, I feel like that's part of the mystique and kind of that is sort of part of the mystique and the appeal of Ahsoka after the Clone Wars. I think when you get Rebels, even in her own shows, it's sort of like, what is this important shit that you're doing all the time?
Yeah,
no one really knows. I think that's kind of cool,
I think it's cool, but like,
cool.
and I'm not saying
she's mysterious. I like it.
I'm not saying I need to know everything that Ahsoka does in this time, although I'd certainly love to. And it would be interesting if we didn't I think it would be more effective, to me at least, if Ahsoka wasn't the fucking main character of the Clone Wars. Like, if she was like an more Obi-Wan-esque character from the beginning, I get it. But she wasn't. She was a Luke character in the beginning, and then she became so like, it seems a little weird. And look, is it necessary for the show that we understand what Ahsoka's been doing? Absolutely not. But just as an appreciator of the entire Star Wars, I'm going to pay Alden Diaz some money here, tapestry, I would appreciate knowing the fuck's Ahsoka up to. And, and I'd love to hear about I think a lot of the stuff that Ahsoka does as Fulcrum in season 1 specifically, again off screen, feels a bit weird and almost a little out of character. And I remind us, maybe it isn't out of character because we don't see it from her side. But why is this secrecy? Why is the secrecy necessary? For why is the secrecy necessary that she's only known to Fulcrum as Fulcrum? Like when it's an interesting decision, but on her part to only have some of the crew know. And I get the whole I get the line that Hera says to Sabine about oh, if somebody's captured, they can only reveal what they know, and by keeping people in the dark and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also and of course there's also the fact that Ahsoka reveals everything to everybody at the end of the season anyway. Yeah. But
I think that's because when the rebel cell, or when her rebel cell kind of, cavalry charges in with all their CR-90 Corvettes to rescue the Ghost and to rescue Kanan, they're kind of like, well, cat's out of the bag anyway, and that's sort of the progression to season 2, is that we start to get we start to enter
the
a
wider
more
story.
open, we enter a wider story, we enter a more open rebellion.
Yeah.
And my assumption, and this is just sort of an assumption because there's nothing to prove or disprove this, but to your point, my assumption is that if Hera is serious about the operational security, if it is the way that she says it is, Ahsoka might not even know about the rest of the Ghost crew. She might not know exactly who they are, how many of them are there.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly knows now, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think it makes perfect sense for her to be as secretive as she is.
Yeah.
She knows better than anyone, what the Empire is capable of, even if from her time in the Republic and the Jedi and whatnot.
I guess there's just a, like, what the secrecy does for me is there is a, and I think this is coming off of Andor from how Luthen did it. There's a veil of like, it's not exactly like secrecy, but like secrecy is obvious, but like there's a veil of like there's a coldness to it that seems very, at least the way that she's doing it, seems kind of un-Jedi-esque to me, and you can, and everybody in the,
she isn't a Jedi.
I was about to say, everybody in the comments, you can say me, oh, she's no Jedi. I'm not like, yeah, I get it, but like, there's plenty of the values of the Jedi that she is maintained steadfast to. It's the dogma that she's rejected, but like but the kind of person Ahsoka has become is still pretty in line with at least what the Jedi claimed to have value by their downfall.
Well, I think what you're identifying is something that Luthen struggles with in Andor, and that's what Sabine is struggling with here too, is that the sort of strategic and material realities of being in organized military resistance or rebellion. The realities of that are simply such that you lose some of your, not your humanity, but you do things you're not comfortable with. You're in situations you're not comfortable with.
You have to get your hands dirty to a certain extent.
And part of that is not knowing. Part of that is, having to trust that you're doing the right thing and working towards something larger when you don't know the information, because it would be a massive security risk for you to actually know all the information. That's something that Luthen struggles with a lot. He even said, I'm using the tools of my enemy. I'm using the tools of my enemy. He is really even deeper, I think. Much deeper than Hera, at least in terms of how it works emotionally and how it figures in the show. But I think it's not so much I don't think it's any sort of decision or reflection of the character of the people involved. What reflects the character of the people involved and their values is how they respond to that. And that is what this episode is about. With Sabine, now that we've seen season 4, really, I think, of Rebels, we know more specifically she's not just like an angsty, she's not just an angsty teenager with trust issues because she was working for the Empire. Like, she was working on a weapon that was turned against her own home and her own family to destroy her people. That's a little bit. Sorry, continue.
And even even by the way, if that hadn't been revealed, it would have been totally understandable, I feel like, on her part.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm glad you mentioned Luthen, because the dichotomy that I drew between Luthen and Hera in this episode is the one that I drew as well. And I think it points to a real weakness of Luthen's. And which is, that Hera and Luthen are facing very similar dilemmas, like Luthen throughout Andor and Hera in this episode. But, I'm gonna tread lightly because I know you haven't seen all of season 2 of Andor yet. But there are several loyal agents of Luthens in Andor season 1 who dip pretty quickly in Andor season 2. Like, quite a few of them. But, you know, Sabine dips from the Ghost Crew for like a tiny bit, but that's not because she distrusts anybody. It's in season 3. Obviously, it's because she has her own obligations with her family. And it's that dichotomy, and I'm not saying that, but it's for a very specific reason. I'm not saying that secrecy isn't necessary. I'm saying that we see how Luthen and Clea handle it versus how Hera handles it. Luthen and Clea are approached several times. It's not even I want to know what we're doing. It's that I want to know what I'm doing matters. It's not even like it's not even it's actually a less needy request than what Sabine's telling Hera in this. And what do they get in return? And this remains consistent throughout season 2. Yeah, we're doing shit with a lot of people. You know, fuck off. We'll tell you. You'll know what next to do when we'll tell you next to do it. And until then, keep your head low. Await your next order. And now let's compare that to what Hera does in this episode, where yes, she's a bit snarky at the beginning, but she makes pains to reassure Sabine that what they're doing matters and that one day it will all be worth it. Which I understand there is still some tension between them after this episode, of course less, but you see how different these two responses are, where Luthen, you know, with I'm content to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I understand that to a certain extent, but how much of it, of course, is one question that Andor tackles with, and of course that Rebels will tackle with as well. How much do you do that before you become them? And Hera does employs some of those same, like, protects some of those same secrecy requirements in this episode without seeming like just an asshole. And I think that's what, you know, like, there is a say what you want. Like, I've seen a lot of takes, and I don't necessarily even disagree with them, where, you know, like, where the idea of, like, Luthen had to be the bastard, had to do this shit. Some of it not even great, so that the structure of the rebellion could be there. And it's not even that I disagree with that. It's just that I think that some think that was the only thing, mostly because of, you know, live action, like, biases and stuff like that, and because of how much they love Andor. I think that sometimes they think that was the only thing that the rebellion, and that and Mon, of course, that we see in the show, were the only things that the rebellion was built on. And that's just not true. Hera and the Ghost Crew had a much purer, again, not saying they didn't do violence, they did violence a lot, but they conducted themselves with purer hearts and less morally ambiguous choices. And they were able to do quite well for themselves. So was Luthen's necessary? Yes. But was it the only way? Cut the shit.
Well, I kind of feel like what you're identifying now is kind of almost a product of this show is for kids. Andor is not for kids. I don't know. I don't think that there's anything to be gained from comparing across these two stories. Oh, well, Hera did do this and she did it this way without having to do it. Like, in this next episode, the Rebels, like, they launch a quite frankly, it is a terrorist attack. You know, they plant a bomb on this ship and they blow it up in the middle of a big public forum. You know, granted, no one wanted to be there to begin with, but, like, if that same thing had happened if that same event had happened in Andor, you can bet the Imperials who were standing right there wouldn't have just been knocked off that platform. You know what I'm saying? Like, Like I
Yes,
think that
although I will,
it's one thing.
although
We
I
have to
will
keep in
argue
mind that the
that
way that the story is being told, what we're seeing, the differences that we're seeing is the way the story is being told and what the writers are choosing to focus on based on the audience. You know, a lot of similar events are happening, similar decisions are being made, similar sacrifices are taking place across these two shows, but in Rebels it's a lot more about individual emotional journeys rather than about sacrifice and decision making in that same sense as it is in Andor.
yes and no. Again, this is totally a me thing, which is about like, you know, folks putting Andor up on a pedestal that I think, like, I'm not saying it's not good. I just think that people are using it to bash other shows, and I think that's disingenuous and kind of shitty. And but I also think that like the reason I'm comparing these two is because they are very much like parallel shows. They're taking place at the same time, literally, about a lot of the same things, literally. But either way, I didn't want to get like too much of a divergence onto this, but here we are. What was I gonna say? But yeah, what was I gonna say? There, yeah, I didn't mean to get off this much on a tangent. Whoops, sorry about that. But you know, there's a lot. We did cover a lot of the like thematic sort of themes of this episode, like the thematic strands of this episode. At the Imperial Academy, as you mentioned earlier, they didn't want me to ask questions either. You know, as I said in my notes, if the rebels become so straight-laced and protocol and regiment driven in fighting the Empire, they risk becoming them in a way. And it's an important, even if Hera and they are prevented in doing that, is an important thing for Sabine to raise, even if she is a bit exasperated. Yeah, I'm interested. Here's another thing. So obviously the bulk of the episode takes place at Fort Anaxes, which brings us to yet another great storytelling strand that should absolutely be picked up sometime soon. We last saw Anaxes, if you recall, as a Republic-protected world that was saved from a separatist invasion by Anakin, Rex, and Bad Batch in Season 7 of the Clone Wars. After the end of the war and the rise of the Empire, Anaxes was, according to the StarWars.com database, obliterated in a cataclysmic event, though miraculously, Fort Anaxes remains intact. The facility becomes a fuel depot and meeting place for those who require privacy in their dealings. The reference book Dawn of Rebellion also states that the cataclysmic event that was previously mentioned was the result of a catastrophic main reactor failure, detonating a massive stockpile of hypermatter in these shipyards. Tales of Anaxes, anybody? I think this is fascinating. This could be the fall of the Empire. Maybe there was something on Anaxes they didn't want to get out. A mineral that they wanted to harvest, like on Ryloth or Gorman. Spoiler. Or maybe it was really just a natural disaster. I don't know. I think this is fascinating.
Absolutely. I'm very curious as to what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, how did this happen? You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Anaxes is very cool here. I like, you know, I think once again it's enriched by, you know, on the rewatch, having benefited from seeing season 7 of the Clone Wars,
Absolutely.
knowing that the history is layered in there. And I think it's interesting that I noticed that they chose to make this episode, the Empire is not really involved in the bulk of the episode. You know, this is Sabine and Hera against nature rather than against man in a sense. You know, to go back
Yeah,
to the
absolutely.
sort of story conflict categorizations. I'm not sure if that's significant at all, but it was interesting that sort of for this episode where it's much for them, it's the first chance that we really get a lot of introspection. We just go into why are they here? You know, what do they need? And sort of through this question of trust and through this conflict of who needs to know what about the intelligence. This is our way of learning for the first time, really learning about these two characters. So it's sort of interesting that they pick a it feels like almost the entire environment feels like a crucible, sort of, for them to kind of hash this out. And it doesn't really happen in that way. Like, it just sort of they fight back to back, and then they fight back to back, and then that's sort of, that's it. They kind of, go back to being cool after that. But regardless.
Yeah. And of course, with the fyrnocks, like the being, I think this is also great, like a sort of metaphor. The harder, the harder we fight back, the stronger. Sometimes it feels like the harder we fight, the harder things get out there. The harder they fight against the fyrnocks, at first they're immune to the light. I know at first they're scared of the light, then they become immune to it. The harder they fight back. And then, of course, they have to create those huge Rhydonium explosions, which, for those of you who have seen season 2 of Andor, Rhydo. That's all I'm going to say. Rhydo. I look forward to Jacob when you for you to re-listen to this after you watch. I think this is arc 2 of. I think this is episode 6 of season 2 of Andor. You will look at Rhydonium in an entirely different way after that. It's incredible. Yeah. As I'm looking through my notes, as Jacob mentioned already, we get we get more hints as into Sabine's backstory that we will of course pick up in season 3, and I think that's also a really incredible strength of this show, by the way, is that Ezra is the main character of the show, but by the time we end this show, all 6 characters of the Ghost Crew are emotionally explored, complete, and well-rounded characters, and I don't think that can be undersold.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. The show just goes so deep with the one family unit that we get. That's one thing that I love about it.
Yeah, I have 2 more notes. First one is we have more Star Wars food with the space waffles in this.
Yeah, the space waffles, and more in-universe music, whatever Zeb's blasting.
And the other one we'll talk about in music later. I love Hera so much. Why the hell does she have that tiny ass blurred pistol? All of the other ones are packing so much better heat, and Hera has a gun that is like the size of her finger. What the hell is that?
I mean, I think for just in terms of character design, it makes sense to give each person, not only a unique silhouette, unique look, mannerisms, all that. Part of that, they're fighting a lot, is unique weapons.
Yeah.
Kanan's got the blaster saber combo. Ezra at this point has got his little slingshot. Sabine has the dualies. Zeb has the bow rifle, which is amazing, and I wish we got to see bow rifles more in Star Wars.
And I'm not saying that Hera has to have a bow rifle. I'm saying that Hera's blaster is like almost comically small. It's like ridiculous.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think that kind of fits her. It fits her character and what we know about her, where she's not. Obviously, she's the pilot. She's, she's on getaway driver duty. She's on, picking Zeb and Ezra up from school, like picking the kids up from school duty. She's not out on the front lines. So I think it makes sense. But it also shows, in a way, it shows that she just brought her one pistol and didn't really think to, arm herself to the teeth necessarily. It shows her trust. It shows her trust in Fulcrum, that she trusted that the site would be safe. And that trust was definitely let down a little bit because, I feel like that's something that, should have been, Ahsoka, you could have just said, hey, there's these crazy, wild animals here. Make sure you get out before the sun goes down. But no, that was conveniently left out. But yeah, it is funny that she has the holdout, the holdout blaster. These are referred to in universe. I think this type of gun, but it is sort of a pilot's pistol. Someone who, like Padme uses a holdout blaster. Like people where it's not convenient to be walking around with a big gun.
Yeah, but even Padme's holdout blaster is bigger than that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
Like,
it makes sense. You're a pilot. You
but it's
want
not
to be
like she's
lugging
never
around.
in
You can tuck it
fights.
in your boot. Tuck it in. Yeah. Well, it works for her most of the time. And the rebel, they're clearly on a bit of a shoestring. I mean, clearly most of their money is just going straight into the Ghost to keep
Yeah.
that ship
Like,
afloat.
but, like, I
So to
believe, like,
speak.
even if she had, like, a
Yeah.
Kanan's exact blaster, like, that would make more sense to me.
I feel like it makes sense. I feel like it fits. I don't have a problem with it. I guess in this particular instance it becomes an issue, but I mean she is more than capable of handling herself, tiny gun or big gun, as we see throughout the rest of the show. I've become fond of it, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
But
Anything else you have?
I do understand your hesitations of like you're really gonna, go out there, do all these things that you're gonna shoot people. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you have for Out of Darkness?
Not really. I think we kind of covered it all. I feel like the Zeb Kanan stuff is pretty, or the Zeb Ezra stuff pretty auxiliary. This is sort of the end of the little kind of Sabine Ezra romance exploration that we get. Not even just Ezra being like Ezra
Kind of
probably
slays.
Ezra just thinking to himself, I should have a Riz. That's probably,
Yeah.
he's 14. If he were alive today, that's what he would be thinking to himself. This kind of puts it to bed. I think, we get Ezra saying, "Oh, thanks for saving me back there." She's just like, "Listen, dude, don't
think
like,
into it too much. Yeah.
yeah, don't think into it." And he's just like, "Okay." And then the dynamic does feel different by the time she gives him I guess that's in the next, at the end of the next 2 episodes, which
Yeah.
we can tackle momentarily. The dynamic does feel different by the end of that, which I'm glad for. I think it's it's nice to have models of man woman friendships that aren't a will they won't they, especially for the kids. I think that's important for people to see, and in a lot of media it's surprisingly rare when you really think about it. It's
And
surprisingly rare just to
you're
see
speaking from
straight male,
Dave's
straight female
mouth.
friendships.
You're speaking from Dave's mouth specifically, and yeah.
Yeah, I know. Shout out to Dave.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dave.
But anyway, yeah. I think this episode honestly is maybe the weakest or second weakest of the season. I think it's probably the weakest behind Idiot's Array. I understand, like, it gets some good character development. I just also think this episode is more representative of Rebels' silly feel than Fight or Flight is, honestly, to me.
I mean, I think
Like,
I've kind of forgotten how streamlined and packed in a lot of the other episodes are, and this is one of the episodes where it's more like, yeah, we do get a lot of thought-provoking dialogue and interesting, significant moments in development with Hera and Sabine. We also get a lot of kind of chaff in this particular episode. We have the recurring fights with the monsters, the with the fyrnocks, it just kind of drags out. The cold open doesn't really figure into anything except for the fact that the ship has a leak, which, if like, it's not terrible, it's not unforgivable, but it definitely is more of a lot of these other episodes. I've been very surprised by how packed and how substantive they actually feel
for
to
its
tale.
weakness.
Yeah.
It's only noticeable for its weakness because it's against all of these incredibly tight, like, well-structured episodes.
Yeah. Like, this is one of the only episodes so far where I think Star Wars Rebels, like, it is, I do agree much more with a lot of the more vehement critics of the early seasons of Rebels, of, yes, this is one of the episodes where we get some important moments, but there also is just kind of a lot of stuff happening, and even stuff happening for the sake of that stuff happening. It's not interesting enough, in my honest opinion. So one of the weaker episodes, but still a good episode by all means.
It's still okay. I think it's still okay.
It's solid.
Yeah. I
Maybe
think
it's not good, but it's tough.
the editorial thing. If you're able to do a little bit more tomorrow, I don't want to like rush anything. I don't think it'll take more than like 20 minutes tomorrow.
Yeah, we could probably wrap it up tomorrow if that becomes
Um,
necessary. I could find
yeah. All
find
right,
the
let's
time.
do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do Empire Day though.
Oh man, this is where
Our
we really.
mid-season episodes, we get Ezra trying to train with the Force, specifically his connection to animals, which is setting up this idea that Rebels explores of like what is the living Force. Well, it's connections with living creatures. It's the Force's connection to nature. Ezra builds that up. However, I don't really want to get into that now because we don't actually really explore it that much. Here, give me your
Yeah.
lightsaber and I'll make the connection I mentioned to you. We
Yeah.
were talking the other day. Ezra Bridger meet Cal Kestis.
Yeah, I was like, Cal would be proud. Cal's punched in the air right now.
Yeah, Cal Cox Blaster. Oh wait, you were actually planning to kill him? But yeah, and then we have like Ezra like watching the TIE fighter soar overhead as something is wrong, which again for this episode is also I feel like a very weak cut to title. But whatever.
Could be better.
Yeah, but you know, we have of course one of the big conceits of this episode is Empire Day, and which I love. It's a great lore concept to add to canon. One of the things that fascists love to do is plan large ceremonious events for no other purpose than to talk about how great they or their leaders are. I'm certainly, certainly comes to mind the grand military parades that is historical despots like Hitler or Stalin, as well as current dictators like Putin or Kim Jong-un have held historically to celebrate the greatness of their country or just themselves as leaders of said country. I also cannot help but think of a certain parade that a certain president may or may not be holding in a few weeks on his birthday, supposedly to celebrate his country's military's 250th birthday, but of course also to celebrate himself. Well, maybe we'll see the major key Imperial March playing there. Who knows? But yeah, it's not a great time to live in the United States right now, surprisingly enough. But yeah, big development in this episode. We're in 4 BBY. We've officially pushed the timeline forward after all of this time of Andor being in season 1 being in 5 and then Rebels season 1 being in 5. We're now officially in 4. We're making some progress. We're going to make a lot of progress. We're going to get to 1 BBY and then at the end of Rebels and then roll it back because we got a whole bunch that happens in 4 to 1 that we're not covering because we want to do Rebels all straight. So, we're going to make a whole lot of progress like timeline-wise and then we're going to like walk it all back. But that's what happens. And it is an interesting. I'd love to get like a calendar-esque thing, only because like it's interesting to me that if Empire Day is a turn from 5 to 4, that means that the destruction of the Death Star happens sometime around what would be the 19th Empire Day. Probably not exactly, but like
Yeah.
Which is very interesting as the Empire is ready to celebrate themselves, that the ultimate, just like in this episode, in a smaller way with the TIE Interceptor V1, a representation of their military might goes kaboom because of 2-meter thermal exhaust port. Like I'm now like comparing the humiliation that the Empire receives at the parade to the humiliation they receive with the destruction of Death Star. Of course, that one costs far more lives and military might to them than this one does, but they're ultimately different scale representations of the same thing, which is the Empire. It's an Icarus like sort of thing where they trot out a model of their strength out into the public eye where everybody can see it. Like, after running such a horrible, oppressive empire, what do they think is going to happen? Like, it's an incredible visual metaphor for their arrogance, and I think that's really striking.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also in this episode, we have Imperial racial profiling, which,
Sees Rodian. Grab him.
Which
God,
is not technically like the racial profiling like we think of it because it's not, oh, you're a Rodian, you must have done something wrong. You're a Rhodian that looks like somebody we're pursuing who did something wrong. But still, it's close enough, and
Yeah.
it deals with something that is not covered as canon as much as it was in Legends, which is Imperial speciesism. You know,
Yeah.
as many fascist empires are constructed in our real world on racism, but that's based on skin color or ethnicity. The Empire doesn't seem to have as much of a problem with that, although, you know, Andor season 1 with the Canary male with dark features comment also suggests otherwise a little bit. But even so, the Empire's main problem seems to be with non-humans. Again, it is less prevalent in canon than it is in Legends, although that is not to say it's not prevalent in canon. The first Thrawn novel is all about this, even though Thrawn looks like a human in every single way other than his skin being blue, just because he is not a human, and visibly so. He is repeatedly bombarded with harassment. He is one of the only non-human Imperial admirals out there. The first non-human Imperial Grand Admiral, probably the only one, honestly. It is prevalent in canon, and I don't want to say it's nice to see here, because obviously it's not nice, but like I think it's important that it is shown here, even if it's not as directly prevalent in canon as it was in Legends.
Yeah, I mean, in Legends, like, the Empire was intensely, I guess, racist. They were
The Empire was just
intensely discriminatory and supremacist against pretty much every alien species. And, you know, like for instance, in the Book of Sith, which is now Legends, I think it probably came out in like 2013, 2012, right around that time, actually, of the Disney acquisition. Emperor Palpatine, in his section in that book, he writes extensively on his use of, you know, prejudice and creating and amplifying anti-alien sentiments, fears, disgust, prejudice as one of his most powerful tools of control. So that is an idea that I think could be explored more.
Yeah, there's very much like I feel like the Legends Empire used racism like the Third Reich did, where as like a driving force of their fascism and xenophobia, where I feel like the Canon Empire uses it kind of like the current fascist movement in America does, where it's still there. They mask it better, but it's still there. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's I don't know. Yeah.
Again, it's not a direct comparison. I think it's a bit crude, but still, you know, there's you know, the Empire. That's the other thing that that Empire Day does is it is an emboldening of these fascists to display their glorious power. We see this in Old Joe's Bar. The Imperial Hall Night broadcast should play here at all times, they say. They don't care about that other than we can force you to do this because we can. Like, I don't think they care about protocol. They care about, well, you play what we tell you to play. You say what we tell you to say. And I think that's incredibly empowering for these people, as perverted as it is. You know, we in a similar nature, there's all this stuff in the parade about this. You know, the Empire's doctoring the footage of Palpatine to make him look like he did when he was Chancellor, because he still needs to look like a strongman.
Yeah.
Of course, not enough people see old Prune Face to correct the record. Plus, if they did, of course, they'd probably be locked away.
He needs to look like a nice, kindly old grandpa, not like a grizzled space.
So everyone believes it. As a senator in Andor says, they don't even bother to lie badly anymore, which is a great quote. But, you know, we have that, this is a fantastic detail. I love the kindness, but that's in there. The Imperial March is now diegetic, but it's not our Imperial March. It's their Imperial March.
The major key. I love the major key Imperial March. It's so much fun. Oh my god,
it's so much fun, but it also sounds incredibly fucked up and incredibly wrong. You know, if we look at, this is one of the things I love to talk about. I have a musical background. I've studied a ton of music theory. The original Imperial March is all minor keys except for one at major key at the very end, which I like to say represents Vader, as he is all darkness, but there's a little light peeking through. This is all major keys, which there's a sense that like there all major keys doesn't have to sound this way, but there's a specific modal scale, which is like a hyper major scale called Lydian mode. Those music theory nerds listening to this, if you're there, will know that make
we're in
things
deep
sound
now.
like that make things sound not just positive but like manic, and that's what this sounds like. This sounds like this sounds like somebody like saying like instead of like somebody saying, "Oh, smile, everything's good," it's somebody saying, "Smile," you know, like that menacing way, like pointing a gun at your head and saying, "Smile." Like it's this forced, like almost toxic positive music that is just sickening. It's just sickening to listen to. Of course, you don't listen to it, you don't hear it a lot because it's in the background, but still, the idea that's there is incredibly impactful. Of course, Travis sends a transmission with in the middle of Joe's bar, which I say was a risky move, but we also now know, of course, because of Vision of Hope, which we'll get to in a few episodes, how risky it isn't. Which I think is, which I love to. I love to talk about all the Travis we see so far in the season. Once we get to Vision of Hope and we learn the truth that Travis is an op. It's I forgot how incredibly impactful. Even though I don't love that episode as a whole, I love how it recontextualizes everything we're seeing now. Yeah, but Ezra goes back to his roost, and this episode, of course, is incredibly personal for Ezra because we get these, you know, we peel back the layers of
Nice.
we peel back the layers of Ezra's past. We learned that Ezra's parents didn't just die. They didn't just go away. No, they were disappeared.
Yeah.
And what I love is this parallel of Ezra's birthday is the same day as the government that ruined his life, as the government that has created nearly every problem that Ezra faces and has faced for the last 7 years. And it is this, you know, Ezra is on edge throughout this entire episode and much of the next episode, and it's totally understandable it's totally understandable why. Everybody is celebrating the thing that until this episode he is convinced killed the only people keeping him afloat for his early years. And they're celebrating them and not him. And it's incredibly fucked up. And it's an incredible juxtaposition. And I love that. Yeah, anything about this episode before we get to the parade?
Gosh, not really. I know you wanted to talk about the Force training scene later, or when that storyline comes up, but I do think in terms of cold opens, this is one of the very best because it really primes you, if you're paying attention, for what these next two episodes are about, where it's through the Force. It's just about the Force, not as much about, you know, we don't know yet at this point what Ezra is dealing with, what his blocks are in this case. But the idea that Ezra needs to let his guard down and be vulnerable with himself and his surroundings and move past his sort of the scar tissue of his experiences in life in order to reach the next level of his development. I mean, if that's not the whole season for him, right there, if you could condense it down to one scene, I don't know what is. So I think just as a little sort of allegory and primer for the rest of these next two episodes, I think that I like it quite a bit.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and I think that I didn't mean to suggest it was unimportant. Just that, like,
I wasn't saying that you were.
No, I get it, but I think it is like incredibly crucial, especially because obviously we see the connection with nature that Ezra struggles to get here, and then of course we get the inversion of that at the end of Gathering Forces, where Ezra connects with them with nature in all the wrong ways, which I think which I think hits home incredibly impactfully. Yeah. Meanwhile, we get to the parade. I thought there might have been like an animation or behind the scenes reason why Price is just not in this show, despite being mentioned all the fucking time. Until season 3, there isn't, to my knowledge. They literally, the Thrawn novel gives us the reason of, like, basically she wasn't ready to be. She was just some woman who the Empire decided, hey, we can manipulate you. Like, we can give you our figurehead position as the governor of Lothal, but you're not kind of ready for this, so we're gonna
interesting.
take you through governor training school until you're ready for this.
Yeah,
that's what the Thrawn novel covers.
Interesting. I always kind of assumed that it was the opposite. I assumed that she was, off doing big important things on Coruscant or something.
I mean, she is. We
it can be
hear
both.
that,
I guess the same
Governor
time.
Price was invited to Coruscant to celebrate Emperor Palpatine with Emperor Palpatine himself, which I think is also very funny. Like, sorry, losers, your hometown girl doesn't want any association fucks whatsoever. She's partying with the bigwig bureaucrats who've probably never even heard of your shithole planet. Cheer for her. It's the most derogatory shit ever, and but it's presented as if it's this great thing, which is honestly like all of Tuish stuff in this episode. That line, I did like a deep dive into this in my notes. Lothal is just as important to our empire as any world in the galaxy, which is very funny that's the follow-up sentence to, sorry, your governor couldn't be here. She's partying with bigwigs on Coruscant. Although thinking about it a bit harder, it's actually pretty telling.
Well, that's kind of an ego. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if Lothal's as important as any other planet, why are only local officials there?
Yeah.
Are local officials only there on every other planet? So by that logic, the Empire cares about none of them.
Well, that's sort of an ego.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No. Just finish your thought. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, Tua isn't lying. Lothal is as important to the Empire as any other planet. They all aren't. Deviously nihilistic. An incredibly clever line to make it seem like Lothal is appreciated, while still affirming that the only institution or organization in the galaxy that really matters is the fascist regime we're all celebrating.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it as well is just I imagine it's the ego of the people involved. It's the ego of Makath Tua, for example, and all the other Imperial officials, that they add that part in specifically to show us how much we matter, and also maybe it's more maybe it's propaganda. Maybe they're saying, like, hey guys, we know the Empire treats you like, hey, people here, citizens, we know the Empire treats you like absolute dog crap. We know that your life is like measurably worse in every possible way since the Empire showed up. We know that we're pretty much universally hated here, and we use the violence and imprisonment and threats of whatever else have you to maintain control. But you really, really matter to us because we need to put our factories here because you have stuff in the ground that we need. So here's a starfighter that we're going to build here. Like, maybe now that I'm thinking about it, I think that might be the angle. Like, it's all. I mean, obviously, it's all a show,
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Specifically with Makath Tua, I think is interesting because there's the case that can be made, I think made very strongly, that she's drunk the Kool-Aid. That I think she, like some of them, like Callus, probably don't believe what they're saying, but I think Tua, the argument can be made strongly that she does. That she does believe that Lothal is important to the Empire, and that she does believe that the Empire is a force for good in the galaxy, which is almost scarier. It's almost scarier that she genuinely believes. It's the things that it's the thing that, like, I know a lot of people politically have been talking about with the right in America right now, is who believes what they're saying and who's just vying for power, and which one's worse. Which one's it's worse to have somebody who knows what they're doing to some extent is wrong, or is it worse to have someone who genuinely believes that allying with a fascist takeover of this country is a good, who genuinely believes in, like, the things that the right is selling? And it's a really important conversation to have, and I think it's just really interesting in this show as well. Yeah, but like, I love that. That's the other thing I love about this episode is like we have that humor in this episode, but while like acknowledging how crazy the situation is. Like, the banter between Hera and Canon, pretty, isn't it? Yeah, I almost feel bad about blowing it up. Like,
Yeah.
they know the Empire has worked so goddamn hard to get this new TIE fighter about it
Yeah.
out here, and they are going to send this shit tumbling. And there's something so gratifying about that. There's something so gratifying about knowing specifically like the as after the show happens, after the explosion happens, you know, there's the line I wrote down: "These rebels have ruined Empire Day. They must be punished." And I wrote down, "Oh no, not the rebels ruining the mandatory fascist victory parade, celebrating their brutal conquest
Yeah.
across the galaxy and the torture, rape, murder, and murder they've committed. Not that." And that's what's the best about this episode. It's not about hurting anybody. It's not about destroying anything. It's about humiliation. It is these people are celebrating themselves for all the horrible things they've done, and we need to, more than anything else, embarrass them. Sorry, I know I've been ranting.
Yeah,
But
no. I think this is one of the ones that kind of bewilders me. Not bewilders me, but makes me raise my eyebrows a little bit. Where every other mission that they go on, has a real, either it's beneficial it helps them survive, makes them profit, helps them, put food on the table, put fuel in the tank, or it does something intensely altruistic, like the Wookiees, for example, where they leave a ton of money on the table with Vijago in exchange for information on a group of Wookiee prisoners being taken to, being taken to Kessel. They rescue them back in Spark Rebellion. This is the first thing where they're not really gaining a lot from this, and they are walking straight into the belly of the beast, and they know that they feel pretty confident they can get away with it. But regardless, that's one of those ones where I'm like, this feels like a bad gamble. You know what I mean?
And tactically, it probably, and from a pure tactical military level, it probably is. But from building a movement, I think this is an incredibly smart idea. It's one of the conversations they were having in the Onderon arc in Clone Wars, where Steela at some point says the people need to believe we can win. And this is not this is about the people need to believe we can win. It's that the people need to believe that the Empire can lose, that the
That
Empire
is
can
true. That is a good,
bleed, that the Empire
they do
can be
get punched in the mouth
humiliated,
here.
that the Empire is holding an incredible celebration of themselves, an important one too. 15 years, we love those like important milestones, the 5s, the 10s, all that kind of stuff. This is probably even more important for them because of that, and to have their prize thing blown up and their officials literally knocked off their feet, like that's something. All right, it's an incredibly important symbolic blow, if it's not actually physical, even if it's not actually physically doing much. But and of course what's great about this episode is that what they lose, they were planning on doing this and not getting a whole lot, like tactically, like physically in return. But, of course, they're rewarded pretty shortly with getting Tseebo away from the Empire, which is actually a pretty big tactical win for them.
Yeah, that is true. They do kind of stumble onto that. It's pretty fortunate. I know Ezra doesn't exactly stumble on it. He knows, but the rest of them, they're just like, oh, cool. Who's this guy?
Yeah, they stumble on.
Yeah,
and it seems like from what's happening with this episode that they kind of do stumble on it only because it seems like Tseebo escaped the Empire pretty recently.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fresh. It's fresh. The Empire is they're freaking out.
Yeah,
trying to find it. It's very
yeah, and of course we have our reveals about Ezra, that this is his birthday, that he's turning 15, which is also, of course, a milestone for the Empire, a milestone for Ezra. 15 is, you're making your way into the world, you're growing up, he's becoming less of a boy and more of a man. And it's incredibly fitting that on this day he's learning more about his past and and not only who he's going to be, but who his parents wanted for him to be. We're fighting for our son's freedom, they say. I don't think Ezra realized as much before this that what the Empire, that them speaking out against the Empire, his parents, was not as much like, of course it was for them and for the people around them, but it was for him. It was for him. We're fighting for our son's freedom. They are fighting. They're speaking out against the Empire that because they didn't want the life that Ezra unfortunately has had forced onto him.
Yeah.
To be forced onto him. Of course, this episode also has incredible significance because of Ezra's relationship with Tseebo, who is the last link he has to his parents.
Yeah.
Living link he has to his parents, at least that we know of right now. We'll find out about Azadi later and other folks, but yeah, and it's really important. Of course, we also learn not only that we talked about the thematic twist of Ezra was born the same day as one of the things he hates most of the world, the Empire, but also there's a canon twist of this, which is very cool, which is, of course, we know Ezra and Luke, and of course Leia to an extent, Ezra and Luke have these very similar hero's journeys, but they're having them being born literal days apart from each other.
Yeah,
it's
wild.
not years, it's
Absolutely
not
wild.
months, it's literal days. Ezra is older than Luke and Leia by, we don't know exactly how long, but like max 3 days, which is very, very weird and very funny from a canon level. Like it's strange, like to think that like with such different life experiences, by the time that Ezra gets back at the end of Ahsoka, that he and Luke are contemporaries, quite literally. But yeah, that's weird. Yeah, so they steal a troop transport, obviously, to get Tseebo off the planet. One of my favorite things, and it's even funnier considering how recently he was embarrassed. But it's like Oresco setting up that like blockade in the middle of that on the little middle of that Lothal street, and he sees the troop transport rushing towards them, and the first question, of course, he asks is, why aren't they stopping?
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, did you see what they just did to you? Do you really think that just because you told them to stop that they would do it?
He's been reading too much about the might of the Empire and all that. He's
But
really drank the Kool-Aid.
That's the thing. As you just said, you were going exactly where I was going. Is that he's drunk Kool-Aid literal hours after being humiliated? He's still like, well, they can't do that. Well, no, they can. They just did. They literally just did. What a clown. We'll obviously see pretty soon that even the Empire thinks he's kind of a clown, and he'll realize that a little too late. Good riddance. But anyway, yeah, no, we have what was I gonna say? We have this great sequence of the Empire trying to stop Tseebo and the other Ghost crew members from boarding the Ghost, which obviously doesn't work. We finally get our introduction. Again, we get introductions to many things. Ezra's a connection with nature. But of course, we get introduction to Chopper with guns, which means, of course, we're getting our prelude to Chopper, our favorite Star Wars war criminal. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see that chaotic bastard fuck up some people. Like, dear Lord, he's been a menace enough in this show. The least he can do is take out a few thousand imps while doing it. That's what I love to see. Yeah, we have, of course, we have that ending episode, ending reveal. Ezra Bridger, it's you. What's he saying? He says he knows what happened to your parents. To be continued. And that's how we end the episode, which is just a stunning end to the episode.
That is a pretty crazy.
The only other thing I want to mention before we end our discussion of this episode is, and this kind of bleeds into the next episode, I'm sorry, the Grand Inquisitor piloting a TIE Advanced V1 makes perfect sense. His TIE helmet looks stupid. I think his TIE helmet looks very weird.
It's just sort of a random custom. Like, it's a random helmet. It doesn't really fit necessarily with the other
it just
helmet
feels
aesthetic,
like,
but I don't know.
yeah, it's not something I'm gonna harp on, but it just looks wrong to me. Maybe it's because like the only other like really dark side user we've seen piloting a TIE fighter is Vader, and Vader doesn't need a helmet, but
Yeah,
like
I
it
don't
just
know.
it just
It's
doesn't
not
look
something
right to me.
it's not something I've ever thought about, but
I didn't think about it until
I
this
don't
time
have
around, but
I
yeah.
guess I don't have I guess I just
Yeah.
don't have a strong
Yeah.
opinion about it. It is definitely it's different though. It's got the transparent red purpose eyes. It's a little weird, but I feel like it's sort of in line with some of the other Inquisitor helmets.
Yeah.
I get like Trilla, for example. Like it's got
And
the
I think
red
I
motif. I don't know. I don't mind it,
I yeah. I think
but
Trilla and like
yeah, not
Seven
one of the
Sister, like
best.
yeah, they yeah. But anyway, yeah. I'll just say, yeah, what a great episode of Star Wars Rebels. Has it all: action, suspense, terror, humor, emotion, moral thought, world building, thrilling twists that throw you off while still making complete sense. A heavy hitter on the level of Spark of Rebellion and Rise of the Old Masters.
Absolutely agree with everything you just said there. Amazing,
Yeah,
very very good episode. Not as good as
we're
the
gonna.
next one though, in my opinion.
Oh, I think it's better than the next one actually.
Really,
So
dude, Gathering
yeah,
Forces is just unbelievable. Oh my gosh.
I think Guiding Force has some great stuff. Why it
Yeah.
wasn't titled Empire Day Part 2 is something I don't really understand, but whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I did not remember that it's technically a part two. Like it has that little to be continued, which
yeah,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They go together. They go together very well.
they're literally, a two-part
Yeah,
episode,
they
so
are. Yeah,
why they weren't titled as that is bewildering to me, but whatever. I forgot that we meet Cassius Constantine in season 1. I thought he was
yeah.
introduced in season 2.
I mean, we barely
Um,
meet him. Like you know, but he's there. Yeah, he's there.
yeah, I think he gets an
There's a
upgraded
couple.
role in season 2, but yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah. Uh, Yeah, Ezra's obviously angry at Tseebo for justifiable reasons. He doesn't know what happened. He hasn't known what happened to his parents in 7 years, so of course he's gonna like pin it all on Tseebo, who I'm not saying doesn't have fault, but I think probably Ezra blames for what happened to his parents more than Tseebo probably deserves.
oh, I mean,
But
Ezra's in no mood. He just like totally flies off the handle as Tseebo. That's just
yeah,
completely motivated by. That's completely fueled by his own grief, I think,
yeah, oh,
and the fact that
absolutely.
he is just turned
Yeah,
15 and is dealing with
yeah.
something incredibly one of the most difficult things you can in life.
Yeah, I will say that, or this ship could become a real ghost. The cut to title of this one is, I think, the best one of these three cut to titles, but I still think is just kind of okay. Again, I think
Yeah.
any cut to title that starts with a big revelation is my sort of thing. But again,
Yeah.
I understand that sometimes they can't fit that symmetry. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, for what it's worth, I do think that moment is one of those times, and the entire first half of this episode it's really the first time for the ghosts, the entire crew, not just Ezra and Kennedy. This is really the first time that it really feels like the Empire is throwing a ton at the rebels. They really are, and they really are in a desperate situation. You really
yeah,
feel in these two
you're
episodes.
you're
With
right.
the
There is a
yeah,
really
with
big sense, especially with this episode, of
yeah, like
desperation.
the pursuit, the endless TIE fighter pursuits, Callus and the pickup, the scoop off the transport. Like there's a sense of the Empire's relentlessness, I
Yeah.
think, and sort of the desperation and exhaustion that creates within the Ghost crew. So I
Yeah,
do
from
appreciate
here,
that
it's
about them.
just
Like you
I feel
feel
like
it's
there's
so palpable in this episode.
I feel like from here, it's a straight shot, honestly, to the finale.
I forgot.
Uh,
I
the
always forget
finale
just
of
how
of the
short the
series
season actually
finale.
is.
I mean, the finale of the series of
Yeah,
ramping up, ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. How much can they ramp this shit up? We'll get to Tarkin, we'll get to Vader, we'll get to the new Inquisitors, we'll get obviously to the ultimate ramping up, which is the Grand Admiral himself. But yeah, no, this is the start of, okay, now they're taking them seriously. As Sabine says in Out of Darkness, the harder we fight back against them, the harder they throw at us.
yeah,
It's almost a foreshadowing of what's happening. Yeah, this is an incredible thing of this episode, which is a normal episode would have had the tracking device remain on and then remain undetected, and the Empire corners them. But no. Tseebo detects this one. Now we have to deal with it. Oh, we've already jumped to hyperspace. How do we deal with this? Of course, the logical answer is we detach one ship from the other in hyperspace, which I called an objectively crazy plan.
Easier said than done, apparently.
But then I said, luckily for him, objectively crazy is the name of the game for the Ghost crew. Where I saw people, I think mostly people who hadn't weren't as familiar with the Clone Wars and Rebels. When Ahsoka fights the Imperial remnant from outside of the shuttle in the 3rd episode of Ahsoka, I saw a lot of people calling that ridiculous. I'm like, people, have you seen half the shit the Ghost crew does in Rebels?
Yeah.
Have you seen what Ahsoka does in the Clone Wars? This is a Tuesday for her.
Yeah. Absolute bullshit. God knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Amazing. I love it.
Yeah. In addition, we have so that entire sequence is absolutely crazy. Another thing that this episode does, of course, ending with that lovely ending, is finally have Ezra and Sabine connect. Ezra stop being a sleaze and Sabine and Ezra connect on a human level, because they are quite similar. Not in obviously origin, but in circumstances. Obviously,
the experiences that they've undergone. Yeah.
They're 2 years apart. They've gone through things that no people their age should have to go through. They're here. They're new to this crew who treats them like family, but they're still not ingratiated with the same way as the others are with each other. Ezra has a family who's completely gone missing, but unbeknownst to us at this point, Sabine only wishes her family had gone missing.
Yeah.
And I love that we get the beginnings of them starting to care about each other. Not obviously, as we mentioned before, not in a romantic way, but in a platonic way that still is an emotional bond that is important, and that becomes familial. That becomes to the point where we'll see in Shadow Warrior, where Sabine is willing to risk ungodly things happening in a moment of weakness, of course, to get Ezra back to see her friend for the first time in a decade.
Yeah,
that's important shit.
It's great.
Yeah, and it's incredibly important. One small moment that I love is when Constantine checks into with the Grand Inquisitor.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah,
and when Quizzy says, "I sense movement in the Force," and Constantine has the look on his face, but that I interpreted to be, well, shit, man, I don't know what the fuck you expect me to make of that. It's always so funny to me when any normie Imperial officer interacts with any a Vader or the Inquisitors, because it's always like they're saying this vague ass wizard shit that they've intentionally extinguished from the galaxy, like all the other people who talk like this, and the other Imperial people are like, okay, go off, King, with your magic shit, but I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. It's the meme that's been made from that scene from Breaking Bad, where Jesse's saying the Force moves strongly around this area of the galaxy, and Walter says, "Jesse, what the fuck are you talking about?" I love it so much. Yeah. But of course, after the Phantom detaches and subsequently goes out of hyperspace, which, by the way, that sequence looks fucking amazing.
Yeah, this is the first time this has been put on the screen, so very cool to see.
It's the first time, and I'm not saying the animation has been bad in Rebels so far, but it's the first time I think in the series I've been truly wowed by the animation.
Visually, to carve out the show starts to carve out its identity after you see a few episodes. This is part of that for sure.
And to be clear, it's far from the last. It's only going to get better and better from here.
Oh yeah, granted.
The next part of the episode we get into is that important strand of course, as Ezra and Kanan are on the Phantom. Kanan confronts him about about why he's been on edge this entire time, with Ezra saying, "I'm afraid of knowing, I'm afraid of the truth." Which makes a lot of sense. Ezra's given himself an easy out with the explanation that his parents are dead. You know, shake your hands out of it and just move on. If there's something more out there that would take away that easy out that kept that part of his life stable, if tragic, for the last 8 years. And I think that's an incredibly important conceit of this episode, and like a real piece of vulnerability that Ezra can share. Before, of course, he said he forgives Tseebo through the Force, even though Tseebo is obviously on the Ghost. And it's really interesting to me that right before he unconsciously taps into the dark side, Ezra performs one of the most radical Jedi acts ever, which is mercy.
Yeah.
He forgives Tseebo for all he may have done, and Tseebo reciprocates, and it's really touching.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was my favorite of these 3 episodes. This was my favorite sequence, starting with, with the fyrnocks closing in on them, and then, Ezra kind of has that moment when he's, pushed to the brink. He finally sort of opens up in a way like Kanan was telling him to. And he, like you said, he has that admission, that very vulnerable moment when he realizes and is able to, confront the fact that he's afraid of knowing what really happened. He's afraid of being hurt more than what he's already experienced and what he's already endured. He feels like it could get so much worse if he knows the truth. Like he says, that he's afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, this entire sequence is insane. It's masterful with the creatures, the fyrnocks, and then they suddenly stop, and it's, they're about to kill him, they're about to rip them apart, and then it's just eerily calm. It's amazing, and it's an amazing tie back to the beginning of Empire Day, where it was kind of laid out for us. This is what Ezra's challenge is going to be for him to take the next step of his Jedi training.
Yeah, and of course, so we get that right before we get on to, I think it's before we get on to, or maybe it's on the go still. Tseebo says he says Tseebo knows Bridger's fate. And I remember when I originally watched this, I thought it was Bridger's fate. I thought he was talking about Ezra, as in like maybe the Empire had secret plans for him, but no, it's his parents. I completely forget where this thread goes. Obviously, like, we don't actually find out what happened to them until middle of season 2. Basically, this time next season. So this can't go anywhere major until then. I don't think we see Tseebo again. I don't know. I don't think we see Tseebo again after this. I really don't.
Yeah.
Let's check. No, we don't. So yeah,
this is actually the last. Yeah, he's mentioned in a couple of other episodes. It's interesting. It says his voice is in Fire Across the Galaxy on Wikipedia,
which is interesting. Yeah, I saw that.
I'm gonna have to look for that, because I had no idea that existed.
Yeah, I don't remember that. So it's also interesting. Apparently, he was referenced in Battlefront Twilight Company, which is a great little crossover thing. Love when they do stuff like that. But yeah, so that's like wrapping up our thread with Tseebo, and then they get onto the Anaxis base.
I thought his moment with Tseebo is after they're in the cave. That's after they're already in Anaxis, I thought.
Either way, I don't remember.
Either way, same everything you said still holds true.
Yeah. Either way, they get to an exit. They're in the cave. The Grand Inquisitor gets down, and they do their little trap and send all of the fyrnocks. I forgot the Ezra and Kanan, with the power of the light side, send the fyrnocks after them after the Inquisitor and his stormtroopers first.
Yeah,
and then of course there's an intense duel between Kanan and the Inquisitor, and like Kanan, like, even though technically, as we talked about, the Grand Inquisitor figures out lightsaber styles incredibly quickly. The advantage that Kanan had, there were a few advantages. First of all, that Kanan had in that first fight that we saw in Rise of the Old Masters. First one being, of course, that they were trying to escape. Kanan wasn't trying to win. And second one is that even though Grand Inquisitor was figuring out Kanan's style, he was figured out Kanan's style pretty quickly. He was still trying to figure out Kanan's strategy and his exact methods as a fighter, which are two very different things. But this time he doesn't have that, so you can see Kanan starting to falter. Yeah, and you can see the Inquisitor asserting more dominance in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it honestly feels like the Inquisitor is just toying with Kanan. He crosses blades with him a few times. He's pushing him backwards, and then at a certain point, he almost just seems like, all right, let's get real. Just throws him out of the way with the Force, and goes straight for Ezra, who I think his real goal is pretty clearly turning Ezra. He wants Ezra to come into the fold, maybe to become an Inquisitor, what have you. He wants to turn Ezra to the dark side, and he's going hard at that goal. He's really encouraging. And I think he gets super excited when Ezra screams "get back," and we start to feel some of the dark side.
I love I would have loved a line. I would have loved a line from the Grand Inquisitor, because you can draw the conclusion that he's sensed Ezra's sort of, what's that word? He had sensed Ezra's the compromised state that Ezra was in due to everything that happened over these past two episodes. I would have loved a line because that indicated that was how he knew to seize the opportunity, because he sensed Ezra's feelings.
Yeah,
it wasn't strictly necessary, but it would have been cool. But then there's the crazy lightsaber duel. Kanan decides to, and this is an interesting arc that I didn't remember. So, obviously there are 3 duels, but really, it's really just 2 major duels with the Grand Inquisitor that Kanan has, with this one and the one Fire Across the Galaxy. And both times Kanan tries a trick with a blaster. The first one is really just a trick. This one's really just a trick. He tries to hey, what if I just throw my blaster? I bet he wouldn't expect that.
Yeah.
But tricks don't work against the Grand Inquisitor unless it's really outrageous and crazy, which this one wasn't enough. He's the Grand Inquisitor. You don't try tricks against him.
Yeah, I feel
as opposed to, I was just gonna say, as opposed to what we've infamously called the Jerish charge in Fire Across the Galaxy, where that's not a trick that he uses with the lightsaber blaster that Ezra will eventually build. That is a concerted strategy. It's it is I'm going in there and I'm going to use this to my advantage. It's not a, hey, we'll see if this works, which actually ties in very well with the do or do not, there is no try we were talking about last episode. Of let me try this, versus, no, I'm going to use this and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that in terms of Kanan's character, the fact that in these first fights, he pulls out the blaster and tries to just shoot the Inquisitor, it almost sort of, I can almost see that symbolizing where he is in his own journey as a Jedi with his incomplete training, where he feels at this point still very unsure of his own training, of his own journey. He feels still, for him, being a Jedi is very, very turbulent. And we kind of see in later seasons, he stops using the blaster and only uses his lightsaber when it's time to fight. Even later in this season, as you said, compared to the final duel in Fire Across the Galaxy, I think it sort of symbolizes his lack of confidence and lack of faith in his own identity as a Jedi and his ability to be a Jedi. The fact that he's pulling out the blaster. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a little emotional arcs and that I love from the series. He quickly disarms him, and there's that great shot that I love. It's a incredibly like iconic shot of the Grand Inquisitor emerging with both lightsabers, his and Kanan's, in two hands. Like that's a chilling shot. Any like shot that they pause for effect with the Grand Inquisitor and a lightsaber, first the one coming out of the smoke in Resident Masters, and then this is automatically just incredibly like striking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, Quizzy tempts Ezra, but of course this time is far more effective given everything he's gone through these last two episodes. And then Ezra cracks. And summons, as it's called, the mother of all fyrnocks. And yeah, look at his face. That is like untapped like rage. It's fear. It's so incredibly, again, I said this before, but it's incredibly striking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those things that you like. Of course, as Kanan says, he left himself open to it. I do not think this was a conscious choice.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, he's
something that just, it almost is something that just kind of happened to Ezra.
Yeah.
And but Kanan after of course, owns up to it and says, yeah, no, I should have at least like given you at least a quick 101 on how to be ready to like cursorily prevent that, because it is a real risk. And that's, I think, something that's really interesting about this episode is that, usually there are conscious choices to go to the dark side or to use the dark side. This is an almost instinctual, there's a like Luke says to Rael in Last Jedi, you went straight to the dark. And of course, I'm not trying to suggest this is coming out of nowhere, because of course it isn't, but it is this weird, almost possessed state that Ezra's in, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, this is Ezra's real first. It's his first brush, really, with the dark side, and I think it's an important moment for him where Kanan realizes like the true sort of depth of his strength in the Force and of his potential, and we kind of realize much more clearly what the Inquisitor's goal is and why it's so important for Kanan to be protecting Ezra. And we see, Kanan's going to feel that more and more strongly as he goes through the season as well. And I mean, this entire sequence, this entire scene is just absolutely amazing to me. I forgot how much I love it. The dialogue of the Inquisitor, the way that he's taunting Ezra and sort of pushing him to the brink, of the dark side. The duel with Kanan is absolutely incredible, as short-lived as it is. The way he just, they're going at it, and then all of a sudden we realize that the Inquisitor's kind of just toying with him, and it, oh gosh,
yeah,
it's pretty incredible. I really enjoyed it.
It's fantastic. And then, Ezra wakes up on the Phantom ride back. What happened? I feel so cold.
Yeah, he kind of
that's going to be another motif in the show, is the idea of the dark side being cold. We'll see it with another character next season, where their effects on the Force is a chill, which I think is very fascinating. Yeah, and then they get back, and then finally Sabine gives Ezra that picture of the young Bridgers alongside that very heartfelt "Happy Birthday, Ezra Bridger," and it's something. And like that combined with like Hera saying what happened, and Kanan being like, no, we're not talking about that right now. Like, he needs some space. We're gonna although Kanan maybe didn't handle this the best before, he's quickly making up for it after, and he's quickly realizing exactly. He's quickly, through learning the hard way how to do this whole master thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't blame Kanan for anything that happens. I think he is clearly he's clearly, as much as Ezra is learning, he's learning with Ezra, and he's flying by the seat of his pants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. but it's mistakes are still mistakes, and he made one, but he's owning up to it.
What
Which
exactly
I
was
think
his mistake? Do you think? I'm a little.
his mistake was not anticipating that Ezra opening to the dark side, like being open to the dark side, was possible.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And again, I don't blame him necessarily for not considering it, because they're really just doing things on the go, and his whole and this whole Ezra being his Jedi Padawan thing was a new development, but in such a time of darkness, Ezra being open to that wasn't like a crazy leap.
Yeah.
If it didn't happen then, it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
But everybody makes mistakes, and Kanan is going to become this is a stumbling block for Kanan as he becomes one of the better Jedi Masters I think we see in Star Wars. I think by end season 3, really, really early season 4, he becomes one of the best Jedi Masters we see in Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm into that. I love Canon.
Yeah, and then we get that zoom shot as the ghost jumps to, and Ezra's had his first encounter with the dark side. They've learned some critical details about his family. He's yet again reaffirmed his loyalty to this crew. And that ends our mid-season finale, mid-season episode, with a double episode, which I think Empire Day and Gathering Forces is. Yeah, I think it's great. For me, it's a little bit less good than Empire Day. I think it's a little less flashy than its predecessor. I really loved the fascist, that sounded wrong. I love the musings on fascism, especially with the Empire Day parade.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, to be sure.
That the episode that last episode did. But this episode had great moments for Ezra and Kanan and Sabine. Obviously as we mentioned, second duel between Kanan and Grand Inquisitor was intense. Ezra tapping into the dark side was an important juncture that this season needed to hit. Yeah. As for these 3 episodes, Jacob, I think I can predict both of our rankings. I'm gathering yours would be, of these 3, would be Gathering Forces up top, Empire Day, and then Out of Darkness.
Yeah, I think each one is. These are all great. Gathering. No, not Gathering Forces. Out of Darkness is solid. It's decent. It's not one of my favorites, but yes, every episode is better than the last. Empire Day is amazing, and I think Gathering Forces is phenomenal. I think it's one of the greatest. It's one of the best episodes of this season, and I forgot how much I enjoy it. So I'm going with Gathering Forces.
I think it's a little less, I don't know what it is. I think maybe just going back to the fyrnocks to me was like, okay, we're doing this, but it makes sense, but it just I felt like the fyrnocks, as interesting as they were as a metaphor, were still kind of a bit of a gimmick in Out of Darkness, and I feel like, okay, so we're going back to the gimmick here. But
I didn't feel like it was a gimmick. I felt like they served their purpose, which was for there to be there had to be pressure in order for Ezra to have that breakthrough moment and be able to continue his development as a Jedi. And ultimately, they didn't really. I don't know. I guess I didn't have a big problem with it.
No, I get that, but anyway, my point is that I'm going to switch the 2 around. I think Empire Day is my favorite of these.
That's fair.
3, but Gathering Forces is pretty darn.
Mad at that.
But Gathering Forces is pretty close behind, and Out of Darkness is. I think Out of Darkness is the 2 episodes that and I think Rebels does this, as does Bad Batch, where I think both of them have really great track records, but every season there are always these 1 or 2 episodes that just don't land. Out of Darkness is one of them. I think Idiot's Array, which we'll get to, I think next episode, is another one that just doesn't land, which is fine. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Next week, we got some more episodes of Star Wars Rebels, but we're not doing it alone. Joining us for the first time since actually not that long. Joining us for their first time back on In a Galaxy since October. Kerwin and Keith Yard from the excellent Star Wars show Father Son Galaxy. They joined us for 2 episodes that we did for the Bad Batch in seasons 1 and 3, respectively, I think. Did they join us for season 2? They did not. Okay, but anyway, they joined us for seasons 1 and 3, and they're joining us back for Rebels, Path of the Jedi, Idiot's Array, and Vision of Hope. We're very excited to have them on, and yeah, so in the meantime, you can listen to us everywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at inagalaxypod.b. You can follow us on Blue Sky. You can follow us on Blue Sky at inagalaxypod.bsky.social. You can follow me on my Linktree, linktr.ee/_OGFan327. You can. Epic Conversations is currently on a bit of is stalling a little bit, but we will be back very soon. Andy vs. Goose is going to be filmed pretty soon, and we have some other matches in the works. I think if that's it, then all there's left to say is may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.